Hello again. This is Chad Everett Brochures. I am the host of Growing Up in the Wilds of Suburbia, and I can't tell you how many times I've actually take my thumbnail, the picture for the video. Uh, I've got to come up with something else. I'm my own worst critic when it comes to this. All right. So what I wanted to discuss today is more bandwagon thinking or groupthink. With that, it's you get a group of people, or you jump on an ideology or an idea that it becomes something valuable to you, and you start dismissing other aspects of the information that's coming in. A good example of this, for the time being, whether you like the president or not, he does have a lot of bandwagon thinking on both sides. There are some people that believe he can't do anything wrong, and there's some people that believe he can't do anything right. So when these types of thought processes start taking place, you don't have to put as much effort into thinking, as much energy into thinking. So therefore, you can start dismissing more information because you feel that by as soon as some sort of topic is brought up, the clickbait type mindset, and for anybody who's not familiar with clickbait, it's where you read a very short introduction into some sort of information, whether it's an article, a video, or whatever it is. It seems to have an emotional attachment or effect on you immediately, and it's drawn to just get you to click on the article because a lot of some of the articles and videos that are out there, they just get paid based off how many people click on the video or article. So they call it clickbait. It doesn't even have to be the full substance. In some instances, I have come across, and I don't have references at the moment, unfortunately, and I apologize for that, but where the actual title itself is refuted in the article and acknowledged in the article, but you have to read the majority of it before you understand that what their title is exactly the opposite of what the article really is written about. So it's written ambiguously enough in the first part of it that you really can't tell that it wasn't necessarily going the route of the title. And then later on, it completely refutes itself, so contradicts the title. And you don't really typically want to find that in an article that you're reading, because you're polarized as soon as you read something and you think to yourself, that makes sense, or that's something I'd like to read. If it doesn't have some sort of flashy emotional values that get you either excited or angry, you could put excitement into anger into excitement, but we'll use the concept of excitement as a positive or desirable in this, and anger as a negative. Both elicit a response of following the information to at least start reading it. Now, if nothing else, like social media has taught us that there's a lot of people that like something, but they haven't actually looked at it. They haven't read it. They haven't watched the video. They don't know much about it, but they like the title or they like the person. Therefore, they're going to go ahead and submit a some sort of value to it. Like, I like that video. Good for you. Kind of thing, or that article, I like it. They'll even share it based off title. So, but what that does is it increases groupthink, or in psychology, it is called groupthink. There's also bandwagon thinking, which are in the same family. But groupthink is just a mass group of people think a specific way. Bandwagon thinking would be a little bit more polarized to a specific narrative. Not necessarily everybody in the room thinks this way because, we're all in the room and the majority says it, so all of us are just going to concede that that's what we believe, or at least support the idea. Bandwagon thinking is going to be a little bit more of, well, this is what's going on, and it's kind of the explanation of whatever the narrative is. So what you get when you have, and again, just using President Trump as an example, I'm not here for the declaration whether I find him to be an effective president or not. I can make a video on that at another time, but not for today. This is more of how people just think about. There's a lot of news organizations that they aren't even publishing with integrity. They're publishing just to the narrative. And when you publish to just the narrative, it's not doing journalism. It's not doing, it's not journalism with an integrity at all. In school, they teach you, and I'm not a journalist, a student of journalism or anything, but I do know quite a few people that have gone through and have degrees in journalism, and they will tell you this, that integrity or publishing what is right is predominantly what's taught, or at least was what was taught. Modern, these people that didn't just graduate, they're recent, but not that recent. So maybe it's changed, but I doubt it. But having the idea that what you publish should have honesty and non-biasedness. Like science asks for non-biasedness, and science is built in such a way, especially psychology falls, it is in the sciences, it tries to eliminate, using the scientific method, biasness by putting your ideas up against others in a measurement of accuracy. And the goal is to try to disprove your idea, not to prove it. So you have your hypothesis, and you try to disprove it in order to reduce inaccuracies. And other scientists or other people that are in the study that you're in are intending to try to dispel what you put out so that they can have a better truth rise to the top, not an attachment, a pet project of yours or whatever it is. I have my own pet ideas as well, but I do try to put them out there so that they get, they have to survive on their own in the environment of ideas. So what you find is you get publications on the president that, again, I'm talking about President Trump. You'll get publications that are not true. You'll get people that are just trying to sensationalize news in order to produce more viewership without being responsible for the consequences or the outcome of molding minds. So you'll get like the aquarium cleaner that had to do with and I probably will butcher this, but hydrochloroquine, I believe is what it was called, or what the medication is called. And the woman, it's either in Texas or Arizona, that had given that to her husband, and it also had allegedly taken it herself and then had died from it. Her husband had died from it. She did not. Then they were blaming that on President Trump because he touted hydrochloroquine being a cure, and he didn't actually say that. He said that it's showing promise, and that it could be a viable treatment direction. So, but what happened in that conversation is that it's creating more of that bandwagon think. You're not thinking about what comes out of it as far as a consequence of just blindly asserting what you just read is accurate. Now, there's a consequence that comes out of that because you're giving authority away, and you're taking away your own responsibility when you give away your authority of the depth necessary to understand what you're really reading. So the further you need to read into it, the further you need to understand what's going on there. So with this scenario, one of the reasons why you'll give credence or value to what you've read is if the article takes effort, there's energy spent, which is considered to be time or work under time, is the intention that you have a value in that. So there's a dog in the fight, if you will. So that's one of the reasons why people will jump on that bandwagon. They don't want to read every article ever published from that one meeting or that one speech or that one broadcast or whatever that thing is, not broadcast, but from that one event. You don't really want to read every single article to start understanding the biasness that's coming out of the journalist or the organization that published it. You just, I trust them, or they've been, they align with my ideologies. And that's also a question. Is it your ideologies or is it theirs that you've over time adopted, or whatever the point of origin may, and almost certainly isn't your origin. It's an origin that lined up enough that you give up enough of the fight to let somebody else do it, but you become a cheerleader for them. Excuse me. I don't believe it's a coof. So as far as that goes, what it does is it conditions you. There is a term called neuroplasticity. What neuroplasticity is the regularity of thinking makes it easier to think that way because it changes the pathways in the brain in order to reduce energy consumption and effort so that you can have a conclusion that lines up similar to that particular thinking process faster. So neuroplasticity is a reason why we also get better at things. But it also has a wonderful opportunity for changing things if you understand how to actually utilize scaffolding as a form of changing patterns in yourself and or patterns in another. It's a whole nother term, but it's a great one when it comes to you talk about motivation, but that's not today's video. Changing, one of the reasons why a lot of motivational speakers, by the way, just as a little cliffhanger on that, one of the reasons why a lot of motivational speakers are not very effective in eliciting change, but are really good at developing hype or a following, is because they make you feel good and you feel like you have the tool necessary in order to change your life to the way you want it to be changed, but you don't have the support mechanisms around the idea enough to make the attempts successful before you fatigue or exhaust yourself. And that's where scaffolding becomes extremely effective. And that is likely to something that I'll add into the educations that you'll see coming out in sometime near future for my educational pieces and direction. But for the time being now, that's just at least nothing else, a cliffhanger. If you're more interested in that topic in itself, please comment on this video and or send a message. Yeah. So, and thank you for those that actually have taken the time to comment at this point. But back to the bandwagon thinking, as we continue to build our patterns of thinking into a process that is less effort and better or faster conclusions, we're less likely to want to tinker with that because it seems to be a successful effort on our behalf that we've now become more successful in that thinking process, which is backed up by neuroplasticity and heuristics. If you're not familiar with heuristics as well, it's very similar to the neuroplasticity, and I actually did mention it in the definition, or the Chadist the Chad definition of it. But a heuristic is where you have a chunk or a specific amount of information. You have developed a kind of, it's not a shortcut. It's a shortcut on effort. You have a conclusion as soon as you hear something, because the laborious effort necessary to understand that whatever it is, the subject that you've gone through or the subject that's brought up, you know enough about it that you don't have to think about it. You already understand where you're at with it. You don't need to think through the process, and you can qualify the information as the other person's bringing it on, or that you're being exposed to it. So you can, it's a shortcut in thinking, but it is a shortcut, but I don't really consider it a shortcut necessarily. I just see it as a kind of a warp, from point A to point B. Again, it kind of falls on a shortcut, but I just have a problem with the word for this particular definition, because it does seem like a shortcut is like a hack, which is a cheat. Heuristics really aren't cheats necessarily. They're just energy conservation for the mind, as if you have a subject you know well enough, you can get from point A to point B pretty quickly and not need to go through blazing a trail to get there. So that's what a heuristic is used for, what we use as a term for that mental process, heuristic. So when you spend time developing these heuristics into a neuroplasticity that turns into an ideology or supporting an ideology, and you develop a bandwagon, you can't do anything that's completely foreign to how you do anything else. Everything will have some sort of connecting values, even when you try to explore out into new behaviors. You'll always have that unless there's some sort of trauma that takes effect that really damages the brain's functions or affects the brain's function back to a reset. But other than that, you're going to build from what you know, and that's how you'll come to these newer conclusions, is you're going to build it from the lens of the perspectives that you currently have. You may have more worldviews than another person, because one person may be stuck in one worldview, and you have an inter-exchanging options and worldviews that create another worldview, which is your ability to see things at different angles or perspectives. But ultimately, it still comes out to a worldview. But you'll also have people that are less open-minded, that are more closed-minded, if you will, and they have more predictable thinking patterns, that that person well enough that they don't have to be educated, or they could be educated, doesn't matter. They could just be devoted to one way of thinking or viewing the world, and therefore you can predict that behavior or some sort of outcome that's associated with them. But as you get into these consistencies of behaviors, you start to develop new behaviors yourself. Now, here's an issue that can come up. If you want to be less cynical or less hostile or potentially upset easily, you will have to start practicing things that help calm you, that help center you, that help balance you out. Because if you keep doing the same thing, as my earlier example about President Trump, if you continue to hate on this man without the diverse critical thinking that's necessary in order to understand the situation, therefore come to a real, true, logical understanding or conclusion that you don't like him, not using elements of his character, but the whole of his character, then you can have a better understanding of him. But if you think because the way that he speaks is the whole of his character, then position yourself in the same scenario where you consider the whole world will only know you by the way that you speak, and see how many people you think would actually like you beyond that. Because if how you speak and you're also a caring person can be different or distant. You don't have to have people understand or acknowledge that you're a caring person because of the way you speak. Now, being a caring person usually shows up in what you do and how you behave, not so much by what you say. And in fact, if you say enough about you being a caring person and your actions back that up, people start to look at you as, why are you telling us? And their cynicism can come into play there. So position yourself to isolate characteristics or attributes of yourself whenever you're looking at criticizing another person. So if I'm going to criticize, again, the president because of the way he speaks, I'm personally not a fan of the way he speaks. Big issues that I have about that is he speaks with a lot of I can't even pronounce the word right now. He's very ambiguous with the way that he speaks. He doesn't give a lot of definitive value, and he leaves a lot of vague statements, which are common in sales, so the other person can fill in the blanks for their own needs, desires, or wants, and it draws conclusion without the conclusion being stated by the person. So does he have intelligence? Absolutely has intelligence in certain places. Is it a way he's communicating? Our expectation of a president is to speak very eloquently, is the common expectation of a president, to speak very eloquently, to have a real high vocabulary or lexicon, to be able to demonstrate thoughts in such a well thought out way that is easily understandable to the populace. Obama actually spoke very eloquently. President Trump does not speak as eloquently, but his abilities in business are actually what I've seen has been very effective and supportive of the economy and bringing back elements of the country that we would like to see become self-sustaining and great again. But again, I'm not jumping on a bandwagon here overall. I'm looking at the different attributes of the person before putting those critical judgments on them. So if you're going to put the critical judgments on another person over time, that is a process that you're not likely going to leave or abandon very quickly with other people in your life, new relationships or existing relationships. Hell, you even may revisit old relationships with that methodology of thinking and find yourself upset, either desirably upset or undesirably upset, which is you individually. You'll know which one is which for you at that moment. It doesn't mean that in 6 months from now you won't switch it to being the other. No, but you're still the same person, just life events have shifted your views over time. But you may find that it's hard to develop new relationships without being upset or cynical towards that person, because of the way you've practiced yourself into this new character of being upset regularly. I personally do not want to sacrifice my future self with a consistent one thought process. Even if it's love, I don't want to be oversaturated in the concept of love, because there's other things and other elements and attributes about the human being that I can start becoming ignorant to. And I'm not a big fan of willful ignorance, which is part of my definition of stupidity. So overall, it's I rather that I do try to create different thinking processes or continue to exercise thinking processes that are dynamic enough to allow people to really occur for who they are, versus me being able to identify this person doesn't speak eloquently, so therefore I have categorized them as not being up to par for the kind of person I want in my life, or the kind of person I want leading me, or the kind of person, whatever. It bleeds into other areas of your life. You may take it to work. You may take it to your personal relationships, your intimate ones, your friendships. There's all kinds of different places that you can exercise this. But these are costs of us jumping on bandwagons, because bandwagons condition us to groupthink. And again, they sit on the same category. overall, and it can be very dangerous or detrimental. So critical thinking is the opposite of bandwagon or groupthink. So with that, if you want to be somebody who has made a difference in society or made a difference in the world overall, and leave a legacy, you're gonna want to be a critical thinker. You're gonna want to be able to stand out some way. If you think about it, not a lot of people in history are known for being copycats. Actually, few people ever are known for being copycats. Very few people want, the knockoff movie. They want the one that inspired the knockoff. They don't want the knockoff, right? They don't want the, I forgot the name of the one that he did that was designed almost exactly like Transformers, Metamorphers or something like that. And nobody wants that. I mean, if it campy, goofy stuff, maybe for satire reasons, but it doesn't, it's not the original. So if you want to make a bigger difference or leave a better legacy or something that's more honorable to you, figure out where you're going to stand out and don't just blend into the crowd. We do need to be a part of the group because we are part of the group, but we also need to figure out how we can contribute to the group's betterment, not just jump on board with the group's gripe. Don't adopt an argument, create one, have one of your own. Arguing is not a bad thing, and that's one that's an entire video of itself. But as I've mentioned this several times now throughout this video, the different things that can be videos of themselves. Arguing is not a bad thing. We've been taught that it's a bad thing. Argument to violence can be undesirable and a bad thing. But the idea of always being nice is far more detrimental than the idea of arguing. So as far as the things that can be horrible or bad or undesirable, consider that constantly being nice and suppressing how you really feel about something is far worse than to tell people that you don't like them. Suppress it today, you might grow to like them, but there's a good chance that you're going to train them in a way that you're not exactly an honest person, or that you're guarded or whatever. You may be putting off another element that's not really yours, but it's one that shows up the other person because of the way that you behaved in front of them. So being authentic and being sincere is far more beneficial for you because that makes you very, very honest. Now, there are times that misleading for the greater good, but that's another one too. That's a long conversation piece, and how to decipher that and who really has the right to do it, blah, blah, blah. So there's quite a bit in that topic. But for the time being, the real benefit of this is to just consider that if you find that how you feel about a certain subject is also part of a larger whole, consider that you might have adopted or inherited that idea without really critically evaluating what's there. I'll stop it here for now. Please feel free to share, like, subscribe if you haven't, and put comments in the video. I do still get those. I haven't got to the point that I miss any comments or anything. And that can help me kind of gauge the topics that you want to hear. And I'll even bring people on occasionally to chat. Some people from the comment section, some people from other areas in life. So again, thank you. My name is Chad Everett Broshears, and I am the host of Growing Up in the Wilds of Suburbia. Until next time, guys, think critically, okay? Talk to you soon.